Welcome back to Wellness Superheroes. We interrupt this program with a very quick emergency announcement from Dr. Bartlett, who is going to talk to us about the measles outbreak. So welcome back, Dr. Bartlett.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you, ladies. And we're right in the middle of it all right now.
Yeah. So tell us about what's been happening with the measles outbreak.
So the first reported death of measles in quite a while, in many years, was in Lubbock, Texas, which is my neighborhood here in West Texas. And the child was reported to be unvaccinated. They immediately started, when they had a measles case, they started doing a measles vaccine campaign, and they have heavily been vaccinating here in the South Plains of West Texas. And what you need to know is that the measles vaccine, MMR2, can cause all of the complications that the wild measles can cause. You can get a rash, fever. You can get encephalitis. You can have idiopathic thrombotic purpura. And so it can have every one of the complications that you could get from wild measles, also get from the live measles of the vaccine. As a matter of fact, just 4 months ago, coincidentally, in the journals, it was published, the incidence of shedding of the live measles from the measles vaccine. And they showed that a third of the children that received the MMR2 would have the virus, which is an RNA virus, in their nasopharynx. And therefore, they said shedding is not uncommon, is the way they worded it. Well, another way of wording that is that it's common. And so you can get a rash, a fever, a cough, that is a measles rash, fever, and cough, because the vaccine is a measles virus. And so it's supposed to be a live attenuated, which is a term for weakened virus. But it's not the virus that I got as a kid, by the way. MMR1, MMR2, and then they had a third measles vaccine that came out a year ago. And so we have, depending on which vaccine you get, it's not going to be what I got as a kid, just to be clear. And so a lot of adults like myself would assume, well, I got the shot and it didn't bother me. Well, I didn't get what they're using now. And so there actually has been, we're not using the same thing. And so it's not apples to apples. But the fact is that idiopathic thrombotic purpura, which is a condition where you have a lowered platelet count, it affects your immune system for a while. That's why they say do not give this vaccine if you're immune compromised, and if you're around somebody that is has cancer, is on chemo, has AIDS, has rheumatoid arthritis or lupus, and they're on the medicines that treat that. If you've recently got a steroid shot because you had a respiratory infection and the doctors gave you that. They have an antibiotic put in some of the vaccines. And so if you're allergic to that antibiotic that's to protect it from getting infected, you need to know that you should not get this vaccine. It's on the package insert. And so I recommend that parents get on the internet and look up the MMR2 package insert and read what the FDA says. One of the things that's really interesting to me is that the FDA and the CDC are not in sync up until now. And so the FDA gets the information from pharmaceutical companies and about safety and effectiveness and ingredients of their product. And then the FDA will recommend this when you should get those shots based on the information. And on the package insert, the FDA says indicated for 1-year-old, not for under 1-year-old. But what you see with the CDC is they're saying you could give it down to 6 months old. Well, that's not based on what the information is that the FDA approved it on.
Wow.
And so you have a disconnect between the CDC and FDA for years now. And so pediatricians are repeating what the CDC says. And I would like to remind everyone that the CDC director said that if you get the COVID shot, you won't get COVID.
Right.
And you won't spread COVID. And so clearly, the CDC director, Rochelle Walensky, during the COVID pandemic lied.
Yeah.
She may not have realized she was lying. I don't know if she knew she was lying or not, but she was lying because the COVID shot does not prevent disease. It does not prevent the spread. So that's just one of many examples that the CDC has been wrong concerning vaccines. And so they might get things right too, but they were wrong on vaccines just recently. And so with the MMR vaccine, it's reported a 1 in 20,000 incidence of idiopathic thrombotic purpura. If you 1 in 20,000, if that complication, if you have wild measles, it's 1 in 40,000 from the vaccine. And so the vaccines are not without risk.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, in the package insert, it says if you have an illness right now, you should not get it. And if you have a history of febrile seizures, if you should not get the vaccine. If you have a family history of an immune problem, you should not get the vaccine. There's a lot of contraindications. It is not for everybody.
Yeah.
And so parents need to have all the information, and then parents can make the decision. And as I've told Bobby Kennedy's team, the parents can handle the truth. The American people can handle the truth, but they deserve to hear the truth. And if a pediatrician is not telling them this information, then they're not following ethically and legally their responsibility according to the American Medical Association for informed consent. Informed consent, you tell all the risks and all the benefits. Tell all the benefits, but tell all the risks. And so, and there's also the ingredients issue. And so we learned a lot during the COVID shots that there's a lot of ingredients that they were not forthright with.
Right.
And that's why the Florida Surgeon General says he cannot recommend the COVID shot for one person out of 30 million people in Florida. And that's at the Florida Department of Health website. It's been there for a long time now. And he lists the ingredients that nobody's been told, for the most part, about SV40, green monkey cancer-causing protein called green monkey oncoprotein, like oncology, oncoprotein, onco meaning cancer. And this is green monkey genetic code added to the COVID shots on purpose. How many parents have been told that? But
that's why there's so many turbo cancers from people who got the COVID shots?
Well, the COVID shots were proven to cause frame shifting because it's an RNA with pseudouridine in it, and that makes it not be read accurately. And when it's not read accurately, that's called frame shifting, and it can lead to abnormal proteins that can't be predicted. And when those abnormal non-self proteins are made, if they attach to your liver and your immune system says that's not supposed to be here, that's an intruder, it'll have collateral damage of damaging your liver cells. That's why the Pfizer, the company Pfizer listed autoimmune hepatitis as a risk, associated risk with their product.
Oh, wow.
That's one of about 3 dozen autoimmune disorders that Pfizer had listed as potential adverse events from the Pfizer COVID shot.
Yeah.
Meaning it jacks with your immune system.
Yeah.
And that's why it also has AIDS cancer listed by Pfizer as a risk with the COVID shots. We received that information from the FDA by FOIA request only by court order because we had to go to federal court because the FDA said we can't release this for 75 years to the American people. And so we went to federal court and they told the federal judge, we don't want to release this for 75 years to the American people. And the judge said, Judge Mark Pittman, the federal judge in Fort Worth said, baloney, you're going to release this. And that's where we got the list of 1,200 adverse events of special interest. That's the COVID shots.
Yeah.
But for measles, if parents want to give the vaccine to their children, they can, but they deserve to know that they have a risk listed on the package insert of encephalitis, the very thing you're trying to avoid with wild measles. It's a risk with the live measles in the vaccine, per the FDA, had to be added to the package insert because it can and does happen sometimes. It's rare with regular measles. It's rare with the vaccine. But things that are common with the vaccine virus are a rash, a fever, febrile seizures. These are things that can happen with the live measles or with the vaccine measles. And idiopathic thrombotic purpura. I never heard a pediatrician tell us that. And that's where I haven't heard that in a public service announcement during this or any time in the past. I wish I would have known. And so
what do you think caused the outbreak? Like we haven't had an outbreak in a long time.
Definitely some of the cases are a result of the vaccine virus.
That's what I thought.
That we don't know that all of them are,
right.
But the same test for measles is used for the wild virus and also for the vaccine virus. So the vaccine measles virus will test positive,
right?
And it'll be called measles,
right?
And actually, talking.
So somebody who got a measles vaccine could have caused this outbreak. Is that what you're saying?
That is possible.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That is an absolute possibility. Measles does not come from thin air.
Yeah.
And historically in the United States, the CDC, I was CBS medical expert for West Texas for 23 years. And so about 15 years ago, I looked at the CDC website when it was much more useful. And it listed the last 8 measles outbreaks in the United States and where every one of them came from, another country, from migrants from another country. And so, number one, West Texas is on the border with Mexico. Has anyone heard that there's a border crisis? Has anyone heard that there's over 10 million illegal immigrants that have been allowed in the United States, catch and release, have been bussed in, have been flown in? I think I saw a news story about former presidents actually being involved in the plane loads of people coming from South America and Central America into the United States. None of them are being required to get vaccines.
Or to get tested, right? To get tested. Yeah.
And that's not even an issue. And so they're not checking and measles, polio, tuberculosis are endemic in other countries. Yeah. And so endemic means there's a regular threshold of the wild disease in their country, not in the United States. And so has anyone talked about the fact that tuberculosis is up? And there's no vaccine for tuberculosis. So you can't blame anti-vaxxers. You can't blame people who did not get vaccinated. You can't blame the parents because it's not something you can prevent with a vaccine. So how does that happen? Absolutely. It happens from immigrants coming from another country, especially people who have not been vetted. And so when you have 10 million variables, at least, that came across the border, and it's totally ignored in the mainstream news, that's called propaganda. Yeah. When the mainstream news does not report that you can have the most serious complications of wild measles or the measles from the vaccine, the live measles virus from the vaccine is pneumonia or encephalitis, inflammation of the brain, and you have those same risks from the vaccine and from the wild virus. Nobody's saying that in the news. Right. And so, but if you had a case, and I can tell you for sure, there's illegal immigrants in West Texas. Yeah. I remember the health department official of New York City crying 2 years ago in the news that he had 70,000 illegal immigrants that were bussed into his city, and now they have double the rate of polio, tuberculosis. How does that happen? Well, he knew it happened because of the illegal immigrants.
Oh,
That was
wow.
only 70,000. You know how many there are in Texas?
I know.
Oh my goodness, in West Texas. I almost speak a second language here.
Right.
I am a minority in the city that I own a house in. And so when these are very real science-based variables that are not being discussed or admitted. And I would say admitted. They're not being admitted. And so the number one probability for a wild virus in the United States is illegal immigration. That's a fact. And
So, Dr. Bartlett, talk to us, if I can interrupt, talk to us about the complications of contracting measles in the wild versus the contracting it from the vaccine.
Same risk, the same list. You have twice the risk, twice the possibility, according to one report, of getting the idiopathic thrombotic purpura, which is an immune response that actually you have a lowered immune system for a while, and you also have lowered platelet count. And so that can happen. In one report, it says 1 in 20,000 by the wild virus, but with the vaccine, it's 1 in 40,000. So it's still a risk. And then encephalitis, inflammation of the brain, is a risk with both. You can look at the package insert. And also listed as a risk in the package insert is transverse myelitis. I have treated that from COVID, from a COVID shot. A patient that got a COVID shot 2 hours before came into my ER and was paralyzed from the waist down. Wow. And that's where the spinal cord is damaged by the virus. Oh, and so we know there's risk with the live virus in the measles vaccine. We know that there's risk with the wild measles coming from illegal immigrants bringing it into the country. And so those are the two sources. And to blame people that didn't vaccinate their children when they didn't bring the measles is ridiculous. And not to acknowledge that there's over 10 million immigrants that have not been vetted, have not been vaccinated with the MMR2 before they got here is unconscionable.
So you said before that it's like this measles is not the same as like I got the measles when I was a kid. Like I didn't get a vaccine. I got the measles. It was no big deal. I was sick for like a week or whatever, and I was fine. I mean, all the kids got it back then. So this measles is more dangerous. Is that correct?
So the measles that you got from wild measles gives you a more lasting immunity than the vaccine.
Yeah.
First of all.
Yeah.
Secondly, we're finding right now, real time, frontline boots on the ground, that patients that have measles, children that have measles, are responding overwhelmingly, like miraculously, with the budesonide nebulizer treatments at home.
Imagine that.
And so there's a common pathway with respiratory viruses of a cytokine storm. Who would have thought that something that was life-saving during COVID, a respiratory virus, would also be very effective against measles? And so that doesn't mean they don't have measles. It just means that the risk of the inflammatory cytokines, the interleukin 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 11, 13, 15, thromboxane, cyclooxygenase, all those things are shut down every time you get a nebulizer treatment of budesonide. And that's a common pathway. Those things cause inflammation, eventually permeability of the blood-brain barrier, and then can lead to encephalitis. Wow. And so you're heading off the risk of encephalitis. Now, both the vaccine and the wild virus can cause febrile seizures, and that's not good. And so, but it's a risk with both.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure parents are being told that. They deserve to know. But I'm recommending don't wait on someone else to tell you. There's a one-page package insert for the MMR2 on the internet. Look at it. If you're a parent, educate yourself, because we've learned during COVID that it does pay, and people have lost their lives when they didn't do their own research and they just blindly trusted someone in a white coat. That's not how it should be. Yeah. But the good news is, and then the second main complication, either with wild measles or with the measles in the vaccine, is bacterial pneumonia, secondary bacterial pneumonia. The number one risk factor for bacterial pneumonia is a primary viral respiratory infection. That's what measles is. And so this is one of those times you give an empiric treatment with a bacteria, with an antibiotic. This is the time you cover it. Kind of like, and so pediatricians that might not be real smart might say, well, you don't have a bacterial infection. No, they have a respiratory viral illness that is predisposing them to a dangerous secondary bacterial pneumonia. And just like if someone's going to have a knee replacement, they're going to get a load of IV antibiotics empirically, not because they have an infection, but because they're going to be at increased risk because their skin is cut, and the skin, an intact skin is the first layer of protection from a bacterial infection. So we give antibiotics empirically for all kinds of conditions and situations in medicine because it's scientifically sound to do that. And this is one of those situations that you should use an antibiotic. I recommend clarithromycin if someone isn't allergic to it because it covers the atypical bacteria like mycoplasma, a walking pneumonia bacteria, and it also covers strep pneumonia, which is the encapsulated bacteria. So, you know, we've already been here before. We saw that there was
a COVID protocol. It's your COVID protocol.
It is. It's what worked for COVID.
Yeah.
And who would have thought that another respiratory virus that actually they just published, how interesting, they just studied and published the incidence of shedding with the MMR virus vaccine in October of 24. Really? And
now we have an outbreak.
Just 4 months later, we have that. That's a very, very pertinent information.
Yeah.
And so the bottom line is we don't need to be scared.
No.
You need to have a nebulizer at home, and budesonide nebulizer treatments are right now helping the family. Let's just say the family that had the baby that died, when the family was requesting nebulizer treatments in the hospital and denied, and then 12 hours later they get a call that the baby has expired. That family had others that were sick in the family not doing well, and they turned around with one budesonide treatment at home.
Oh my gosh.
And so fantastic. I'm telling you, cutting edge right now information that has not been spoken in the news or any podcast. This is right now hot.
That's why we had to get on with you immediately, because I'm like, we have to tell people this. And thank God we have a website with physicians, a network of physicians to help you out throughout the United States.
Yeah,
so they can help you with this protocol.
Yes, parents need to ask. They need to be prepared. Don't be scared.
And I'll send an email out to all the doctors in the network, and with a link to this, just letting them know that they can treat. With this protocol is working, right?
Yes, it is working.
Yeah.
It is working right now. It's working right now in Gaines County.
Yeah.
The epicenter of the outbreak.
Yeah.
Working in the epicenter where they're doing a huge vaccine campaign.
Yes.
It's working right now where, to my shame, to Texas Tech's shame, they added Deborah Birx to their faculty at Texas Tech. I went to Texas Tech. So she actually arrived here before the outbreak. And so you got to say, that's
too many coincidence, Doc. Too many
interesting trivia. Quite a coincidence that Deborah Birx ends up in West Texas right before we have a nationwide scare.
Right. Oh, it's all over the news and X, and everybody's going crazy, and they're saying, "Oh, it's because the RFK's anti-vax, and that's what's blah blah blah." That's like,
no. I'll tell you what I can tell you. Bobby Kennedy is all about safe vaccines and informed consent. And I'll tell you, the people that are mocking him clearly are against informed consent. They want to keep information from the American people. Exhibit A is that the FDA told Public Health and Medical Professionals for Transparency, the nonprofit that I'm on the board of, that they didn't want to release the information on the COVID shot for 75 years to the doctors. And so doctors have a ethical, moral, and legal responsibility to give informed consent about vaccines, about surgeries, about every medicine. And we had the FDA and Pfizer not being cooperative on that. Pfizer could have given that information, but it actually had to come from the FDA because a federal judge forced it by federal court order after we gave the FOIA request and they refused. And they said they wanted to keep it for 75 years. So I'm saying right now, parents need to be the ones that are doing the research, and they can look on the internet and they can read the package insert. And there's going to be a lot of pediatricians that are ticked off. Oh, that's wrong. You're interfering with patient care. No, it's right to give informed consent. And so there's a risk with the vaccine. Every possible problem you could have with wild measles is a possibility with the vaccine measles virus. And it sheds, in this study that was published in October, the name of the journal, I want to look it up for you. I think it's the Journal of Virology or something like that. It's like a mainstream journal. Let me see here.
You can find it, and I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah. Journal of Clinical Virology, volume 173, October 2024. Really? I mean, August 2024. That's pretty an interesting coincidence that we got Deborah Birx out here in the middle of a measles outbreak. She gets here a year before. And then we also have this study published 3 months before we have the outbreak, shedding of measles vaccine RNA. It's an RNA virus in children after receiving measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine. So they're literally, this study is showing that 1/3 of the children that got the vaccine were shedding.
Wow, that's huge.
Again. 1/3 of the children were shedding a live measles virus, which is an RNA virus. It's a single-strand RNA virus. And so, of course, you're going to see virus RNA because it's an RNA virus. Yeah. And so the wording is very clever, but the reality is you have a risk with the vaccine. You have a risk with the wild virus, but we can treat it. And you can, and we have evidence.
And the treatment is very low risk.
Very low risk.
Yes.
Budesonide has been used on 2-pound premature babies without batting an eye. It's been out for over 35 years. It's generic. It's inexpensive. We have long-term safety data, which is really important with any situation. So the FDA saying this vaccine, the MMR2, is indicated for 12 months and older. Okay, that's based on information given by the manufacturer.
Yeah.
But the CDC saying you can give it at 6 months, and we recommend it at 6 months. That's not lining up with even the package insert from the FDA. There's a major disconnect that nobody's calling out, and I'm calling it out.
That's crazy.
Thank you, Dr. Bartlett.
Yeah.
This is very important information. And like you say, parents need to be empowered to go and find the information for themselves, because clearly there's a disconnect, and centralized medicine won't tell you. There are too many who benefit from keeping this information from the public. So.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, for years, apparently the FDA and CDC have been saying different things. The CDC saying, give it at 6 months old. The FDA, which actually had the evidence of the studies of safe and effective, said 12 months old. There's a difference there. And so, and neither one is talking about something that we're telling you right now is being proven in the field of the front line of the pandemic right now in the epicenter, is that budesonide nebulizer treatments are helping these kids no longer be short of breath, stopping their cough, shutting down the cytokine storm release, which causes all the symptoms. It's a tumor necrosis factor. Interleukin-1 is what causes fever. And so when their fever breaks, that is evidence that their tumor necrosis factor was shut down from being released from the respiratory lining, which is where the virus is attacking and causing the release of these cytokines. And so all of these things, even leukotriene, which is montelukast, is an anti-allergy medicine that just targets only one thing. Now, that's shut down with the budesonide nebulizer treatments. It
Wow.
shuts down cyclooxygenase. Cyclooxygenase is what ibuprofen and Motrin target. And you know how effective that is. And so it shuts down every one of these things
Wow.
at the source.
So what about the nasal spray? Would that help too, or is that not recommended for kids? That would
No,
help
it
too.
would work. It would
That's
help.
awesome.
It would
Yeah,
help
it would help
because it will interfere with the release of the cytokines. It'll interfere. It'll stabilize the cell membrane. It'll make it harder for the virus to enter the cells and replicate. And so, just over-the-counter budesonide nose spray will be a good preventive strategy.
Yeah.
But if someone has a cough, a fever, measles, whether it comes from the vaccine, which obviously is happening.
Yeah.
So I just had a mayor call me several days ago from a larger city in this area. And he told me that his health department said, look, if we have 3 cases in our county, by definition, that's an outbreak. 3 cases.
Oh my God.
And they told him, we have 4. We have 4 cases of measles. And then
Wow.
they came back to him shortly after that and said, we have 3 cases. He said, wait, you told me 4. They said, well, yeah, we're not going to count one of them because it clearly came from the vaccine.
Oh, wow.
And
That's
so
interesting.
that one couldn't even be denied. So they just wanted to remove that from the knowledge of the mayor, of the community, of the media. And they only want to acknowledge things that cannot be clearly tied to the vaccine. Now they can do genome sequencing, and they can see if these outbreaks are from the vaccine or from a wild virus.
Wow.
I doubt we're going to ever hear that.
I know.
No.
Because
they're not going to want to admit it that anything came from the vaccines, right?
Well, obviously, because
Yeah.
Literally telling the mayor 25% of the cases actually came just historically. We didn't even have to do genome sequencing. We knew that we could not deny that it came from a vaccine. So we're not going to acknowledge that. Please forget that we told you that. And we're not going to tell anybody else. That's
Wow.
25%. And so
That's crazy.
that just kind of tells you how this is going to go.
Yeah,
with
exactly.
officials. But the good news is that budesonide nebulizer treatments are literally making a difference, and it's $3 a treatment. That's no big pharma's not going to make a dime off of it, and it'll be hard to get certain academic doctors to change their mind, but they're slow learners sometimes, and so. We'll see how we'll see.
So have you contacted Bobby to tell him this?
I'm going to hold that information for a moment.
Okay.
But we know that people that care are aware of the information I'm sharing with you right now.
Okay.
And at the same time, for his sake, I'm not going to answer that. But I will say, for anyone watching this, if you're worried about measles, whether it comes from the virus or whether from the vaccine or from a wild strain that came from an immigrant, then we have something that will help. Yeah. And we have the evidence already. Yeah. And no, it hasn't been published. No, we just had the outbreak a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And it takes time to publish things. Yeah. But you've heard it now. Prove me wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. What have you got to lose?
Yeah.
Wow. Everything to gain. Yeah. Everything to gain.
Readily available. We got long-term safety data on both the antibiotic clarithromycin that's generic, and it's used for infants and children, the antibiotic. The budesonide's been used down to 2-pound premature babies in the NICU, as delicate a human as there is. And it's been used on the fragile elderly in nursing homes. And so these are things that are safe and effective. The vaccine can cause encephalitis. Did you hear me?
Yeah.
Budesonide does not cause encephalitis. Yeah. The antibiotic, clarithromycin, doesn't cause encephalitis. So you get to pick what you want to do, but you deserve to know as a parent that there's options of early treatment, even if someone has a disease, like some of the kids that are in Gaines County that are really sick, that are turning around after a first breathing treatment. That's really boring. It's boring. It's not sexy. It's not expensive. It doesn't sound dramatic. It's not going to scare everybody in the news to say that we got this nebulizer treatment that your kid's doing while they're watching cartoons on TV on Cartoon Network. That doesn't sound nearly as interesting to mainstream media.
No, it doesn't.
But now you know.
Yeah. And by the way, on Budesonide Works, we have links to, if you don't have a nebulizer, to go get them. They're available on Amazon. They used to be readily available in drugstores. Now it's prescription only. But if you do work with the physician in our network, they can order one for you. But if you need it right away, I think the Amazon has plenty. And then all the other things you can also get from Amazon. We have links on the website.
There's also, so budesonideworks.com, you have providers listed there, but also you have a media tab, a studies tab, success stories tab. And the disease that killed 1.2 million Americans was COVID. That's a lot more than one with measles so far.
Right.
And we have evidence there that it works. It's been studied around the world. But there's also myfreedoctor.com that was started by a doctor in Florida that was a Nobel Prize. He didn't win it, but he was a nominee, Nobel Prize nominee, Ben Marble. And you're there. So, you have that option. If you can't get through to those two places, Budesonide Works network fast enough, or because they're overwhelmed with helping people, or myfreedoctor.com, there's synergyhealthdpc.com. Synergyhealthdpc.com is another telemedicine service.
And we have links to all of those on our website. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So this is a one-stop shop. I mean, you got information, and information saves lives, really.
Yeah.
And a lot of people died for lack of knowledge during COVID. And we're not going to do that again.
No, we're not. We're prepared, not scared.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Well,
thank you, Dr. Bartlett.
Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Bartlett, for jumping on here. I called you and you was like, it was like, let's get on right now. Let's tell people what's going on and
I'm literally working in the ER right now. I'm literally working in the ER here where the outbreak is right now.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm not scared. When someone comes in here, if they have measles, no big deal. We got solutions. We got answers. We're not caught without tools in the toolbox. And so we're not helpless or hopeless. And my message to everyone is we're not helpless or hopeless. Don't fall into this fear that is really being promoted. If you'll pay attention, it sure does feel familiar, doesn't it? After the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Thank you, ladies, for getting this information out.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thank you. Thanks so much. Have a good night.